Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with an offshoot of our endless series of conductor lists. It's not an endless series, but large series of conductor lists. That is, time to put the conductors to work, doing something. This is 15 essential classical and romantic symphony cycles with ideal recordings. This combines a couple of things we've been doing. Now, I've done lists of the essential classical symphonies and romantic symphonies and the not essential classical symphonies and romantic symphonies and 20th century symphonies. And we've got lists of all this stuff. But I thought we would put it together, and then I would combine that with our ideal lists, which are lists which have no weak links in recommending recordings. Not necessarily the reference. It doesn't have to be, because there are numerous references for most of these things, numerous excellent versions. And so we've got the list, and we have excellent recordings by the conductors who've been on the other lists. So it's a list extravaganza. And I hope that this helps you in assembling your own collections if there are things that you've been looking for or gaps you want to fill. Now, these are like box sets. These are all symphony cycles that you can get in a clump. Some things are better, frankly, purchased separately, and we'll get to that in a moment. So, you ready to start? We start with Haydn, because music starts with Haydn. Symphonies start with Haydn. And of course, the set you have to get is the Philharmonia Hungarica under Antal Dorati on Decca. Now, some of you may say, this is out of print. It has been. It's been out of print forever, but it's coming back. It's coming back on Eloquence, and so, or on Decca or something. It's coming back. I know that. So it will be available. It's worth noting that. So keep your eye out, and if you got to wait a little while, you got to wait a little while. But otherwise, that's the set still to get. All things considered, it's the one to have as your sort of reference version, your library version. And then you can branch out and get individual performances or other sets or whatever for contrast. Mozart. Now, Mozart is a little complicated because Mozart symphonies, I don't see any particular reason as in an essential context to get all of them. You know, the early symphonies, they're nice, they're charming, but they're not terribly interesting up till about number 25 or so. And then a bunch of people have done all the Mozart symphonies from number 25 or so. And we have to acknowledge a reality. There will always be people who are enthusiasts who say, well, they're all wonderful and you have to have all of them. And he was a genius when he was 3 and he was composing in the womb and all of that stuff. Well, yeah, he was. That's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean what he produced is musically, all that earth-shattering. He was catching up. He was learning his trade. And so by the time he got to symphony number 25-ish, he had sort of arrived. And a lot of people have done later Mozart symphonies, and you can find a set that has whatever bunch you want from like that number on up. But for my basic late Mozart symphonies, I choose the Cleveland Orchestra with George Szell, whose Mozart symphonies are iconic. They're legendary. They're fabulous. And you can get at least the last 6. And he actually did a couple more besides that. So, you can dig around and find them as suits you. But I would definitely start with George Szell on Sony because they are absolutely unbelievably fabulous. Beethoven Symphonies. Well, here it's my however choice for Beethoven Symphony cycles. The NDR Symphony Orchestra under Günter Wand on RCA. It's just the most consistently fine Beethoven cycle out there. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's beautifully recorded, gorgeously played. There isn't a dud in the lot, and some of the performances are among the best ever. Really, they are. So that'll do you really well for Beethoven symphonies. Then we have Schubert Symphonies. Well, Schubert Symphonies come in all kinds of flavors now. The period instrument people have gotten their talons onto them. And there are many, many fine cycles. Really, a lot. I mean, the problem with Schubert Symphonies is that the early ones are kind of Haydn and Mozart-y. And then you get to the unfinished and the great Ninth Symphony. And they're in a different world. They're in the burgeoning world of Romanticism. And some conductors do one bit better than the other bit, and the Great Ninth is a particularly difficult work to pull off. It's always been a challenge. There are so many awful performances of it, but in this case, I've chosen the Berlin Philharmonic under Karl Böhm, partly because Karl Böhm is always an underdog. He has his reputation as being this sort of crotchety, fusty German Kapellmeister, who was a time beater and who was kind of stiff and grumpy. And, well, he was all of those things. But his Schubert is remarkably supple. First of all, his performance of the Fifth Symphony is just glorious. It's to die for. And second of all, he does a great Schubert Ninth. He always has. There's a live one with the Staatskapelle Dresden that's even more exciting than this one, but it's okay. I mean, he really nails it. He has an exciting finale. He has no dead spots anywhere. I mean, he's really, really good for some reason at that symphony, which makes his cycle one of the most consistent, and it's beautifully, beautifully done for that reason. Next, the Mendelssohn Symphonies. Now, the Mendelssohn Symphonies are interesting because if you include the string symphonies that lead up to the numbered symphonies, you've got 13 more of them that you can play with, and they are wonderful pieces. But for our purposes, for the essential list, I think that you really only need to get the numbered ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And even those have neglected works. Number 1 is a wonderful piece that nobody ever plays. The Lobgesang, which is sort of a symphony cantata, is gorgeous and doesn't get performed all that often. The Reformation Symphony, Mendelssohn himself didn't particularly care for. He had a very troubled relationship to the symphony, but the fact of the matter is he was a genius, and the 5 numbered symphonies that he left us are wonderful. And in this case, I would go for the Vienna Philharmonic under Christoph von Dohnányi. They're just beautiful, beautiful performances, sensitive and wonderfully played and rhythmically sharp and alert and peppy, and you got to have that with Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn needs rhythm. He needs lightness. He needs freshness. And that's what you get. So that's a wonderful set. And then Schumann Symphonies. Well, here also is the reference recording for Schumann Symphonies. It's the Staatskapelle Dresden under Wolfgang Sawallisch. Do not get the Staatskapelle Dresden under Christian Thielemann. Ugh, it's horrible. Wear garlic. Do something. It's just horrible. But wow, what a fabulous cycle Sawallisch did with them. It's transparent and rhythmic and exciting. And oh my God, it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And everybody's always thought so since the dawn of time. So it's a completely uncontroversial pick. After Schumann, let's do Bruckner, because we're sort of doing German things. After this, we sort of digress a little bit. The Bruckner Symphonies, well, the best all-around cycle, hands down, is the Saarbrücken Radio Symphony Orchestra under Stanislav Skrowaczewski on Oehms. It was a budget issue. The performances have no weak links whatsoever. They are uniformly fine. It's very, very well played. Skrowaczewski was a composer-conductor of extraordinary ability, and his Bruckner was as fine as anything out there. It's a great way to get all the Bruckner symphonies, and you do get all of them. I think you get like 0 and -0 and 3 pi and I to the 3rd power, and you get everything. So it's terrific. All the symphonies, even the ones Bruckner threw away. Tchaikovsky Symphonies. Well, great Tchaikovsky Symphonies are not easy to come by. Cycles of all 6. There are lots of fine performances of the last 3, but the first 3, 1, 2, and 3, are wonderful. And Manfred is wonderful, too, if you can get it. Well, this set has all of that. It's the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra under Bernard Haitink. Sensitive, beautifully recorded, wonderfully well played, passionate, but at the same time structurally thoughtful, shall we say. They're just really, really good performances with no weak links in that cycle either. And boy, 1, 2, and 3 are so beautiful. It's just a shame nobody listens to them. I remember I went to a concert. It was Lauren Mazel, actually, who was a fan of Tchaikovsky's Second Symphony, The Little Russian. And everybody, it was dazzling. Everybody was just on their feet. Well, it's exciting as hell, the finale. But, people were just turning around saying, where is this piece? Why don't we ever hear it? And that's a good question. I mean, I played it. I played it in community orchestra, but big symphony orchestras tend not to do early Tchaikovsky, and it's a shame. Number one, Winter Dreams is an amazing work for its period from the 1860s, and number three, the Polish is considered Tchaikovsky's weakest because it's formally interesting. It has 5 movements on this, full of great tunes, and the orchestration in Tchaikovsky is always fabulous. So yeah, you're going to want the whole cycle. And Manfred, Haydn actually delivers one of the better Manfreds out there too. It's just a wonderful, big, hairy tone poem full of piss and vinegar, if you want to call it that, in the best possible way. It's a good piece, really a good piece. Dvořák Symphonies. Okay, well, there's lots of good Dvořák cycles out there now, but the one I tend to prefer is the London Symphony Orchestra under Witold Rowicki on Decca. Now, sort of the reference has always been the Istvan Kertész cycle on Decca, also with the London Symphony Orchestra. Hello, Finster. Hi, honey. Yeah, just hang on for a minute, please. Thank you. If you're curious. There she is. Okay, just hang on. Anyway, excuse me. So, the Kertész, which is really very good on Decca. But Rowicki is also on Decca. He was originally on Philips. Now he's on Decca. And his tempos are faster. It's a bit more exciting. The orchestra is just as good. The only weak link in that cycle probably is the 7th, which is a little heavy. It's a little on the heavy side. But then the 7th isn't Kertész's strong suit either. So you can always get a very good 7th to supplement. But it's on the whole, it's probably the best Dvořák cycle out there, I think, for just completeness and energy. It's really terrific. And then Brahms Symphonies. Oh, yes, you got to do Bruno Walter. I mean, you just have to. He was a Brahmsian. He knew Brahms, or was old enough to know Brahms. He had the tradition in his blood, absolutely in his blood. I mean, there are other conductors too who had that. Otto Klemperer, for example, Toscanini, God knows. But Walter's Brahms is very, very special. It has a warmth, a humanity, a singing quality, also the energy. He doesn't screw up the Third Symphony, as everybody tends to. And it's with the Columbia Symphony Orchestra, the stereo cycle. There's a mono cycle with the New York Philharmonic, which is somewhat different, actually. For number 2, actually, it's fun to hear the mono ones. But this is a really good, serious, solid, elegant testament to a conductor who loved that music and understood it like few others. Then we get to Mahler. Mahler is problematic. Mahler is problematic because there is no one cycle that is uniformly great all the way through. That's just a fact. You can make a composite of the Bernstein, Columbia, and the Sony and Deutsche Grammophon cycles and come up with an amazing Mahler cycle. And there are other people who've done them all, but all of them have their pluses and minuses. The most consistent, as I've always said, is the Cologne Radio Symphony Orchestra under Gary Bertini. Who is Gary Bertini, you might say? Well, he's a very good Israeli conductor who spent most of his time working in the German radio arena. And he's a very sensitive Mahler conductor, shapely and intelligent and exciting. And he also has no weak links in this cycle. It's a really remarkable accomplishment. And the orchestra sounds fabulous, and they're extremely well recorded. It was on EMI, now it's Warner. You can find it used, kicking around. And if you don't want to get that one, I understand. But then you're going to have to, assemble a cycle from different sources, which is not a bad idea. As I said, it really isn't. There are some cycles which you're almost better getting individual performances and pursuing them one at a time, particularly with Mahler, when you can savor each symphony, separately, because each one is its own sort of universe. So you could look at reviews and things also and put together your own Mahler cycle if you want. But if you want to get them all, and you can find it, Bertini is a great reference edition, a library edition, as I said, because he doesn't put a foot wrong anywhere. Yes, there are details in other performances that you may prefer, but it also includes, by the way, Das Lied von der Erde, a very good Das Lied von der Erde, recorded live in Japan, and the Adagio of the 10th. And so, it's a wonderful series that nobody knows about, and that its label has treated very shabbily. Hopefully, at some point, someone will get their hands on it or license it, and it'll just stick around for a while so everybody can enjoy it, because it's an extraordinary accomplishment. It really is. After Mahler, the Sibelius Symphonies. Oh, go for the Helsinki Philharmonic with Leif Segerstam on Undine. You get the hometown team, and you get a conductor who does the early Romantic symphonies as well as the later neoclassical symphonies, which almost never happens with Sibelius. That's a very rare thing these days. There are other fine Sibelius cycles, of course. There's Colin Davis with the Boston Symphony, not his other two. There's Bernstein of the New York Philharmonic. There's Pavo Berglund with the Bournemouth Symphony. There's Herbert Blomstedt in San Francisco. We're not shy of wonderful Sibelius cycles. But Segerstam was a terrific conductor who really paid attention to string sonority and string playing, and the Helsinki Philharmonic is 100% on board, and the sonics are really fine, and there are some performances in here which are absolutely superb, including the fourth, Sibelius's darkest symphony, and the fifth, his most heroic. There are no weak links in this cycle at all, so go for it. Nielsen Symphonies. Well, the Nielsen Symphonies are kind of the stepchildren of the great symphony cycles because they still haven't achieved the popularity of the others. And I understand why. They're very muscular, they're very powerful, and very exciting. And the outward appearance of sort of traditional symphonic shape until we get to the fifth masks a genuinely questing, somewhat experimental spirit. And so people are surprised and somewhat disoriented, I think, by Nielsen's combination of energy and advanced traditionalism, you want to call it. There's the wordless vocalese in the second movement of the third symphony. There's the dueling timpani in the finale of the fourth, the crazy snare drum cadenza in the first movement of the fifth, where he has to improvise as if to stop the orchestra. What happens in Nielsen Symphonies is so clear and so powerful that I think some people just aren't ready for its visceral impact. I'm ready for its visceral impact, and you should be too. So in this case, I've gone with a wonderful cycle that also did not get as much acclaim as it deserved. It was the New York Philharmonic under Alan Gilbert under capo. And this is important for a lot of reasons. First of all, the New York Philharmonic effectively stopped making records when the major labels all tanked. And it's very expensive to do these things. And so they made their own video things and released a couple things on their own sort of house label. But Alan Gilbert's tenure at the New York Philharmonic, which was a very good one by and large, was hardly documented on disc. And it's typical of what's happened in the industry that you have a small independent label that managed to get the funds together to actually record the New York Philharmonic doing the Nielsen Symphonies. Now, I saw some of these performances live. They are really, really good. Very, very powerful and exciting and tactilely recorded. There are other excellent Nielsen cycles out there. There's Sakari Oramo on Bis, for example, who's sort of my reference edition for Nielsen Symphonies, but those are three separate discs. This you can get in a nice, convenient box. I think you get the concertos with them, and it's a wonderful memento of an otherwise ill-documented period in the history of the New York Philharmonic, which was playing very, very at the top of its game throughout this cycle. So yeah, I would go for that for Nielsen. And then Rachmaninoff Symphonies, well, a more recent cycle. Slatkin and the Detroit Symphony Orchestra on Naxos. This was Slatkin's second Rachmaninoff cycle. He is absolutely a specialist in this repertoire. Nobody does it better. His original series with St. Louis on Fox is still available, and it's excellent, and it's just been reissued. There are also fine cycles from Svetlanov, if you could find it, his digital late one. And we just had a new one from Christian Machalaru on Lin, which was really, really good. I mean, Rachmaninoff also does not lack for passionate exponents. Maris Janssens with the St. Petersburg Symphony on Warner is terrific, if not as well recorded as these. But Slatkin's Rachmaninoff is special, and this particular cycle is just a testament to what he could do in this music. It's first class. soup to nuts. And you also get the symphonic dances and some other goodies that are just amazingly well done as well. So you can't beat it. You just can't beat it. And finally, here, this choice may be a little controversial. Ives Symphonies. Now, Charles Ives is a little bit off the beaten track, but there's nothing difficult in his first three symphonies. The fourth is where everything goes crazy and experimental, more or less. They are wonderful romantic symphonies, without a doubt. The fourth is also, in its crazy way, a romantic symphony, but it marks the end of the Romantic era and the beginning of contemporary music as we know it, with its crazy collage effects and atonal combinations of parade marches and American folk tunes and hymns and things like that. It's a transcendental work. It has a romantic cast to it. It's reaching for the stars. And he's a really fine composer. And he deserves to be regarded not, as more than just some sort of maverick who popped up from Danbury and did strange things. He was a serious guy with a genuine aesthetic philosophy, and his progress from one work to the next is extraordinary and genuine and as important as any other composer's progress from, through music history as he learned his craft and as he became more and more confident and daring. And all of that is part of the Romantic program. The idea of the artist hero on a quest to conquer, musical ignorance or whatever the program is there. Ives did it. And he is the first great American symphonist, unabashedly. And his works deserve to be considered as such and to join the wonderful, wonderful list of great classical and romantic symphony cycles. So there you have it, my friends. I think this list ought to really... Oh, the performance, of course, Dallas Symphony Orchestra, Andrew Litton on Hyperion. Just fantastic performances, gorgeously recorded. One of Litton's, great testaments from his period in Dallas, and he's a wonderful conductor. All around, and deserves far more attention than he normally gets. So now you have it. 15, was it 15? I think it was 15. Yeah, 15 essential classical romantic symphony cycles with which to build a collection. And if you do build that collection or find a way to build this collection, you're going to have a fantastic core symphonic repertoire that will serve you well for your entire listening life. I guarantee it. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.